Steve Sarkisian has done it again. The Texas Longhorns have landed another defensive lineman from the transfer portal, and we're here to talk about it on today's episode. It is the BK Show. What's up, guys and gals? Welcome in to another edition of the BK Show. This is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, and it's another edition of Texas Under 10, giving you everything you need to know about the Texas Longhorns in less than 10 minutes because you've got shit to do. The breaking news within the last hour: the Longhorns have landed a commitment from Syracuse transfer defensive lineman Murad Watson. We talked about Watson during yesterday's episode. If you missed it, check it out. Watson entered the portal last week. Texas was viewed as a candidate very early on. And yesterday, the Longhorns were able to get the news that Watson was going to be visiting Austin. He arrived to Austin last night. He's been on campus today. I don't know what Texas said. I don't know what Texas did, but clearly it was enough to get Watson to commit before leaving Austin. Bring out the screen share once again. Murad Watson, 6'3", 313 pounds, had a fantastic freshman season at Syracuse in 2024. He was named a freshman All-American by 24/7 Sports, 31 tackles and 1 sack, played nearly 500 snaps, which is not easy to do at a major conference program in your first year. Just goes to show you how good Murad Watson was. And this is just another big body and another great piece for the Longhorns defensive line. It's amazing how much Texas has done to address that position since the start of the offseason. Let's be honest, the defensive line room looked very weak a couple of months ago. Texas was losing Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, and Bill Norton to the NFL. You had 4 guys enter the portal with Sadir Mitchell and Jere Bledsoe and Tia Savea. Who am I forgetting? Aaron Bryant also portaled out of here as well. So that left Alex January and Melvin Hills III as your 2 returning scholarship defensive linemen. Not a great situation for Texas to be in, considering the fact that this is a team that has national championship aspirations in 2025. Neither January or Hills has done a whole lot in college football. And again, those were your only 2 returning scholarship players in that defensive tackle room. Now Texas has brought in 5 more interior defensive linemen. Of course, 3 in the early portal window and now 2 in the spring. Levon Johnson committed last Friday. He's coming in from Maryland. And now you get Murad Watson to come in from Syracuse. And Murad Watson was the top-ranked defensive lineman in the transfer portal, as we remove the screen share there. So this guy has some skins on the wall. This guy was really highly regarded around the country. And this is a massive get. We talked about it yesterday. Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, South Carolina, all of those teams had been linked to Murad Watson. All of those teams were interested in at least getting him on campus for a visit. And of course, ultimately getting him to sign with them. And Texas was able to take care of business, and they prevented Watson from going to any of those places. It's amazing how good Steve Sarkisian and this Texas staff is when they get guys on campus, right? It almost feels like a lock that if a transfer makes his way to Austin, Texas, they are ultimately going to commit to the University of Texas. We saw this with Cal tight end Jack Endries, who of course committed last Friday. Endries was the top-ranked tight end in the portal, and a bunch of big programs from around the country were interested in his services. Texas gets the first visit, and ultimately Texas gets the only visit. Endries ends up committing to the Longhorns. Levon Johnson, he visited Austin last Thursday, actually committed to Bill Belichick in North Carolina Friday morning, but then changed his mind and ended up committing to Texas a few hours later on Friday. Again, just a day after he was here in Austin for a visit. So, man, I don't know what Texas does. I don't know what Texas says, but clearly their recipe has been working. And it was a relatively underwhelming winter portal class for Texas. Yeah, they brought in 5 players, but it was a class that ranked outside of the top 60 in the transfer portal rankings, according to our friends at 24/7 Sports. Now, some schools would be okay with the class that Texas brought in, but that's not what we've grown accustomed to seeing in the Steve Sarkisian era. I mean, last year, for reference, Texas had a top 5 class via the portal in the country. And you're thinking, all right, Texas brings in the number 1 recruiting class this year. They've had a bunch of success finding pieces out of the portal in each of the last 2 seasons. Why aren't they attacking the portal a little bit more here in 2025? Well, patience is a virtue, my friends. Texas didn't go super hard in January, but they have been maybe the most active team in college football over the last week and change. It's now 5 portal additions for the Longhorns since last Monday. Of course, it started with the Stanford wide receiver transfer Emmett Mosley the fifth, and then you bring in a new tight end, you bring in a new kicker, and now 2 defensive linemen for the Longhorns, the icing on the cake, the cherry on top for what is a fantastic Texas defensive line portal class. All things considered, the Longhorns have done just about as good of a job as they possibly could have when it comes to restocking that defensive line room. And look, Texas has been elite at defensive tackle in each of the last 2 seasons. It's been a huge part of why the Horns have had some of the best run defenses in America and why they've had just some of the best defenses in America. Having guys like T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins and Bill Norton, just to name a few, those guys have been instrumental to the Longhorn success as a team, making it to back-to-back college football playoff semifinals. You couldn't have a big drop-off. You'd like to have 0 drop-off at that spot, but you really couldn't have a big drop-off, and you couldn't have this run defense looking porous, and you couldn't get 0 pressure from the inside of your defensive line. You needed that room to continue to be productive. It was a priority for the fans. More importantly, it was a priority for Steve Sarkisian and Pete Kwiatkowski and the entirety of the Texas coaching staff. They knew that they had a weakness. They knew how important that group was to what this team has been able to do, and they went out and attacked it. Again, 3 players with Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, and Hero Canoe coming in the early window, and now Levon Johnson and Murad Watson coming here in the spring window. Fantastic stuff with Murad Watson. I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I'll mention it again. He has 3 years of eligibility, and he has to play college football for 2 years. So this is not only a guy who's going to help Texas in 2025, this is a guy who's going to help this team compete in 2026, 2027, and maybe 2028 as well, learning under the tutelage of Kenny Baker, who looks to be the real deal as the Longhorns defensive line coach. And that's huge. That is huge for the Longhorns. A guy who already showed you a lot in a major conference in his first year of college football, to get to come to a place like Texas where he's going to have way more talent around him, which will hopefully make life easier for him, but also to have the chance to get better and utilize all of that untapped potential. And that is huge for Texas. I was excited about the Levon Johnson pickup, but I am stoked about the Murad Watson pickup. The more highlights I've watched of him, the more I've read about him, the more pumped I am, and the more I believe that this guy is going to be a key contributor to this Texas football team when we get to the fall. I don't know if he's going to be a starter. I would guess he's not going to be a starter, but again, nearly 500 snaps in 2024. There is 0 doubt Murad Watson will be a key cog and a big part of the defensive tackle rotation for Texas this coming season. As of this morning, Texas had 83 scholarships filled up, max of 85. Murad Watson will be number 84. So there's still room for Texas to add even more to their roster. And we'll see if we see any attrition in terms of players leaving the Longhorn football program before the portal recloses on Friday. But as of right now, it appears that the Longhorns have 1 more scholarship available to give out. We'll see if they bring in 1 more defensive lineman or if they try to go with a different position. But man, the future of this Texas defensive line room. We'll wrap it up with this. The present looks pretty good, but you think about Murad Watson, you think about the 5-star Justice Terry, you think about Josiah Sharma and Myron Charles, 2 4-stars that are early enrollees, Alex January, Melvin Hills, Hero Canoe. All of those guys have multiple years of eligibility remaining. So hopefully you don't have to do this again. Not that this is bad. Bringing in 5 transfer D linemen is pretty cool, but you should be in a spot where you don't have to do this in 2026. Steve Sarkisian, tip of the cap, my man. Well done. Big pickup for the Longhorns with Murad Watson coming in. Comment below with your thoughts. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Remember, when you watch the BK show, you rule. This has been Texas Under 10. We'll talk to y'all soon. Hook 'em.